evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure having you for another edition of Viewpoint on DBS Television. With us here in the studio, we are having Cynthia Nkwemo. She is a journalist. And of course, we are having Mangevena Shoes once more again to discuss with you issues concerning Cameroon and Africa or the entire world as a whole. And of course, let us all welcome her. Good evening, Cynthia, and thank you very much for being there today.
Good evening, Vanessa, and good evening to our dear televiewers. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Mangevena Shoes.
Good evening, Vanessa. Good evening to our viewers in the house.
Let us take the first part of the show because Viewpoint is divided into two. That is the yes or no question and answer, and later on the debate. For now, let us take the questions. Question 1. Can the increased number of COVID-19 cases in Cameroon be justified that the wrong approach is being used to curb the spread of the coronavirus? I will give it to you, Cynthia.
That is a yes for me.
The wrong approach is being used?
Yes.
Mangevena Shoes?
No, Vanessa.
No. Question 2. Is the Cameroonian diaspora having any contribution for the development of the country? Cynthia?
Yes.
Mangevena Shoes?
Yes, Vanessa.
Yes. And our last question for tonight. Is there any impact of the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization? Mangevena Shoes?
Yes, Vanessa.
Cynthia?
I would say no.
No. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up is the debate. Once more, welcome back. Cynthia, you think that the increased number of COVID-19 cases in Cameroon is as a result of handling the barrier measures or using the wrong approach to handle the coronavirus crisis?
Yeah,
What makes you think so?
that is true. We realize that despite the efforts and everything that is being said about breaking down the distribution or breaking down the spread of COVID-19 in Cameroon, the numbers keep growing. And I already hear us talking of 15,000, close to 15,000 or so, or over 15,000. And I want to believe that if the right measures were put in place, that if the right things were done, if it was strict enough, then we shall not be witnessing this increase, because we realize that they keep saying put on your face mask, do not get too close to other people, maintain 1 meter distance, wash your hands and all the like. There is more of preaching than action actually, because you still see people out there walking without their face mask. They announce on TV almost every day that there are more cases, but even so, people are so unconscious and people still go about without their face mask. And what happens to them? Nothing. I have not seen any case where somebody gets arrested or somebody gets asked to pay a fine for not putting on their face mask. People just go about doing what they want to do and nothing happens to them. And also look at even the way in public places, for example, we expect that every public place should contain maybe a hand washing point with hand sanitizers and all the like. But you go to so many public spaces and you do not see these things. So what measures actually are being implemented to make sure that this virus, the spread, is being cut down? I'm not saying there are no measures at all. Of course there are, but I don't think they are strict or strong enough. And realize that in countries where they took confinement seriously and they took everything seriously, that the country and the governments, the authorities were quite strict to make sure that people follow these rules. They are somehow succeeding to combat the spread of coronavirus compared to those of us who are in the laxest country where people do whatever they want to do. So I think the measures aren't good enough.
You think they're using the wrong approach? Thank you very much. But Mangevena Shoes, you rather think that the right approach is being used, since you said no, they are not using the wrong approach compared to what Cynthia said. Barrier measures are not being respected, the washing of hands, and nothing is being done to find those who do not put on their face masks.
Yes, Vanessa, talking of the increased number of COVID-19 in Cameroon and linking it to the wrong approach, I don't think that it is justifiable, because Cameroon has not invented their own barrier measures. The normal measures, the standard measures that we or approach that we are using is what the World Health Organization prescribed globally. Social distancing, wearing of face mask, regular washing of hands. These are the same principles that are being, sung in Cameroon over and over. But the problem is, we should rather be talking of the applicability of this approach rather than the approach itself. Because in Cameroon, we cannot really talk of lockdown like Cynthia was saying. There was no complete lockdown in Cameroon that we had. Like in other countries, for example, France, Italy, US, where these countries were completely shut down for some close to 3 weeks, 1 month. In Cameroon, things
for 3 months.
Okay, but in Cameroon, life was going on. Only schools, churches, mosques were closed. At one point, off licenses were not closed. We were allowed to open till 6 p.m., which means from 6 p.m. that is when they should close. But then they were functioning. The problem here is when you look at these countries that were completely closed down, their numbers are also increasing. They were increasing and are still even increasing, even right up till now. You cannot tell me that it is because we are not respecting them that they are increasing. I think that coronavirus is a new pandemic that has surprised the health system in the world, and everybody is trying to adapt to it. I've not heard any alternative measures that we would have used. World Health Organization simply gave safety protocols for countries to use, and that is what the countries are using. If you look at the situation in Cameroon now, we started with opening of licenses, schools are resuming, and of course lockdown. Most churches are. Some churches did not even close, Vanessa. Some were actually going. Now the problem here is most economies in most countries are also reopening, but the numbers keep rising. I think the problem here is mankind has not succeeded in laying hands on an adequate vaccine that could curb the spread of this pandemic. It is not the respect of barrier measures, because even the fact that people don't respect it here, countries where people respect it, countries where they were complete lockdown, people where nobody went out without face mask, countries where there was strict respect of these measures still have worse cases than even Cameroon, than Africa. So I think that the problem is the pandemic itself. We have not succeeded in having the vaccine that could, stop the spread of the virus. We are still struggling to understand the virus, struggling to cope with the virus, struggling to, adapt with the ways of, spreading that the virus is using. But then I think we are respecting the safety protocols, because there is no other country that is using something extra than we are using. And when you listen to Cameroonians who are abroad, they even clap that at home we have at least some traditional medicines or cures that we can hang on to. Actually, in some countries, they don't have anything.
All right, we can hang up to, but how valuable or how practicable is being used?
How practicable is being used? The government cannot, the government has not given an official confirmation or go ahead for these traditional medicines to be used. But the report that we have from those who came up with, they are saying that they are using it and it is helping in the field. But then I think that besides the traditional and unofficial method of curing the pandemic, I think that people are still having their face mask. I still have mine. People still move about with their hand sanitizers. Whether they are using it or not is another one, because at least let us draw a line with other countries that are using it, other countries that are using force to implement it, yet their numbers are still increasing. So, yes.
Permit me to bounce back. I am not saying that Cameroon has to adopt measures that are different from what other countries are adopting. I think they are the same measures that the WHO has prescribed, and in that case, we are following the same thing. My problem lies at the level of the implementation. how serious are we about implementing these measures? That is where the problem lies for me, because you see that China was the first country that really suffered from the effects of COVID-19 and having the number of deaths. But you see with me that China is one of those countries where their government doesn't joke. Let me put it that way. They don't joke with them. When they say one, everybody stands with the one. When they say confinement, everybody goes into confinement. Look at South Korea as well. If you look at most of these authoritarian nations, most of these authoritarian countries, I can tell you that they have succeeded to handle this crisis a lot better than those of us in the liberal world, where we say we have rights, let's do what we want and whatsoever. The key in this thing is discipline, and as long as we are all disciplined and we all respect the measures to the fullest, I think we can be able to fight and really win the battle against that virus. So the problem is not that the measures are bad, they are not bad. But how serious are we when it comes to implementing these measures? That's where the issue is.
Cynthia, I have no problem with that. But the question I ask myself is, these countries, you will be surprised that the information we have that surround the statistics that we get from this country is another ball game. Because China, where the virus started and was there for more than 1 month, had very large numbers.
All right, let us come back to our topic of discussion, because we are talking about the approach in curbing the spread here in Cameroon.
That is where we were going to say that the approach that Cameroon is using, the fact that people are not strictly respecting this approach or these measures. Yes, I don't link it to the rising numbers, because some other countries respected it, some other countries locked down their economies, some other countries locked down, the complete country was shut down, and they still had numbers in thousands, far more than what we have in Cameroon. So I rather think that it is, like I said, it is the way the pandemic is evolving, and we are struggling to adapt, to understand. Remember, they are still telling us that we have not reached the peak, which means the infection rate is still on the rise. When we would reach the peak, certainly we will start dropping, and we will dropping. It will not mean that we would have started being serious in respecting these measures.
Manga, when you speak like that, I begin to ask myself the question, probably with our televiewers watching us, does it mean that we should get to the peak before the numbers starts reducing? Like with every illness, disease, once it starts, it's the same thing that happened with malaria. It's the same thing that started with cholera. When there was no vaccine, it was a problem. It's the same thing that started with HIV. It was the same thing that started with Ebola virus. When it started, there was no vaccine. So from your point of view, let us get to the peak first of all before now.
We have no option. We have, if mankind had an option, if America had an option, France, Britain, Germany, Spain, if they had an option, they would have, Russia, India, they would have, curbed the spread. People die, we talk of hundreds that are dying.
Again, we should not compare these countries with Cameroon.
We are not
talking about Africa.
We are not comparing, but we are simply saying that it is the situation that we are faced with, and it is like following its natural course. Because when we would discover the vaccine, we would harness, arrest the rapid rate at which it is spreading, and then we will start talking of a drop in the infection rate. But in as much as there is no vaccine now, it keeps increasing, Vanessa, because the society where we are, like she said, a liberal kind of society. Even if we practice it as what, there are some lapses that will help in making the virus to propagate. So
whatever the case, I just believe that we can avoid the worst instead of sitting around and waiting for the worst to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us take our second question tonight, because people can debate on this particular topic on the whole show. Is the Cameroonian diaspora having any contribution for the development of the country? And Cynthia, you said yes, they have a contribution. So what could be some of those contributions?
Well, in general terms, I believe that our diaspora has contributed a lot when it comes to the development of Cameroon, because most of our brothers and sisters who go out there, most of them are hardworking people. And I'm glad, because most of them, when they work, they don't just get contented with the fact that they have a comfortable life and they just sit where they are and not do anything. Majority of them try to invest back home. You see, a lot of them, they try to open restaurants and snack bars, businesses in short. They try their best to open businesses back home, build something for themselves so that their families can get comfortable, and when they come back home, they can be comfortable as well. And I want to believe that these things they do, it is not, we should not minimize it in any way. Even if somebody opens just a call box, as long as it has money coming in and out, it is a very huge contribution. And not to talk of that, the money they send back home. Most of them, they send money back home to their countries. So if we have anything that can encourage money coming into our economy, then I think that is something we should really applaud. And our diaspora, the people out there, they are hardworking people. I have seen a lot of them who have opened businesses. If you walk even around here, you realize that let's say if we have 10 hotels or restaurants and snack bars and all the like, a good number of them belong to people who are not even in Cameroon. A good number of them belong to people out there who have chosen to work hard where they are and invest back home. So they have a great contribution to our economy.
But do you think that they've been given enough the opportunity to invest in their country, like Cameroon?
Well, when it comes to investment opportunities, I think nobody really gets that push that they need. Even our local people back home who try to invest in producing things locally made in Cameroon, they don't get the push that they need, and neither does the diaspora. Most of them, they struggle on their own. They even have to face problems with huge taxation and and bills to pay and all the like. They have challenges, yes, and they are not. I don't think they receive enough support from those who they are supposed to be receiving support from, but they struggle on their own and they still succeed to make it work. And I believe that if they had more support, like if they had incentives, like if they could have incentives, like something to push them or to facilitate the investment work for them, I think that we shall see a lot more than what we are seeing here. Because I cannot count, even personally in my own family, I have people who have come up with initiatives to open a business, but documentation and all the like, they ask you for things which are almost impossible and huge amounts of money just to open a little business that you will start profiting from it maybe in 5 years to come. And it is quite discouraging. I think they are not actually encouraged. But those who do it
are actually working for the development of their country,
yes,
but the opportunity is
quite limited, but I'm glad most of them are pushful.
Mangev and Ashusa, you think that they are working for the development of Cameroon. So how are they working to ameliorate or for the betterment of Cameroon as a country?
Actually, Vanessa, when you look at, permit me come back from the question where Cynthia was talking about the difficulties they face. They face these difficulties both from the administration and as well from their own family members, from their own communities. From the point of administration, when you look at the statistic that was given by the Ministry of External Relations, about 6 million Cameroonians are out of the country. And you cannot tell me that these 6 million Cameroonians, if they have to come back home, they will not bring anything. Their contribution range from political, social, economic, like she was saying. I look at the political aspect. When we talk of elections in Cameroon, Cameroonians in the diaspora, they have a say. They do carry out elections too in the various countries where they are. And that is their vote, their voice count when they send in their vote. And I think that if they come together, that's why I choose to go back from the question whether they have the push needed. Once we block them, I start from the administration, there are a lot of bottlenecks when it comes to setting up a business in Cameroon. The state machinery is in such a way that you don't break through. And once they attempt 1, 2, 3 times, comparing it with the community or the country where they are living, they find completely discouraged. There are some countries that within 1, 2 days, you can establish your business legally and it functions. There are some communities, some countries that once you establish a business, they give you some number of months without taxes to encourage you to establish. But in the country, just rent a house, intending to open a business, 2, 3 days, tax officials are already in front of the house, asking for a patang, asking for other things. Whereas you are supposed to turn over, have the money, and then pay these things. That is what happens in some other countries. But with us here, it doesn't happen. I take the family side. We have had cases of Cameroonians who are abroad, they send money to their family members, relatives back home to invest into the business, and the money hardly gets to the target.
Yeah.
Either they embezzle it, they do it, or they invest
Poorly.
it poorly done, and that in most of the case has pushed many of them to completely abandon the project. In that way, they would not succeed. So when we talk of how they assist the country, I look at it from a political perspective. Take, for example, the ongoing crisis in the northwest and southwest region. We know that the crisis is being fueled by Cameroonian diaspora.
Yes.
If these Cameroonians who are out of the country, if they decide that this crisis will end, when they say in 2 weeks, peace will return to Cameroon, which means they have a say to do, because they are the ones, we believe they are the ones, from what they say, from their post, from their reactions, they are the people controlling the secessionist fighters who are out there in the field.
Even
Financing them.
Yes.
Which means if they ask them to stop, the military will come back to the barracks. Peace will return to the northwest and southwest, and development will continue. So in as much as they continue destruction in these regions, they are destroying the regions and Cameroon as a whole. It is not only as if they are destroying the northwest and southwest region. No, it's the whole country. And when it's happening, we are the people suffering. So I think that our diaspora, they have a huge potential. Talking about 6 million Cameroonians who are out of the country. Some go there for education, to gain knowledge and come back home. When they come back home, they deploy. They bring their know-how to our society, thereby advancing the level at which we are living. When we were talking of recent of a Cameroonian who was working with the American space, they call it I can't get the name actually. A Cameroonian who was the last person to have fitted the parachute into that space shuttle.
Spaceship.
Correct.
Something of that sort.
Correct. A Cameroonian. Bring her to Cameroon. It's a lady. Bring her to Cameroon. Let her develop it in Cameroon. That's how we would go as much as that. So I think that Cameroonians in the diaspora, they have a great contribution, and that is why they have been clamoring for another another administrative representation that will tackle their affairs. That is, if I'm out of the country and I want to do something here, let me have an official channel where I can go to lay my complaints, and that channels it to the right quarter, because some of them still come here and fall into the hands of fraudsters.
All right, Manga Venasio, since you have the floor, let us take our third question tonight. Is there any impact of the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization, and you think that there is an impact? How is there an impact? Does it mean that the World Health Organization is centered only around the U.S.? Or is it because they are the highest fundraiser of this organization?
You touched it. Because in as much as the functioning of any organization is concerned, an English adage says, he who pays the piper
plays the tune.
America pays the piper here, which is the World Health Organization, and they decide what they are doing. Remember, when the World Health Organization, according to the American idea of things, of their argument, did not work as it was supposed to make sure that they inform the world about the evolution of this pandemic, coronavirus, and U.S. President accused the World Health Organization of conniving with China, hiding the information, and refusing to declare the virus as a pandemic. As such, the World Health Organization failed in their duty to safeguard the world health, as their name says. For that reason, they don't have the right to exist. And being the country that finance a greater portion of the budget of this organization, they are deciding to withdraw. And withdrawing it, if not for long, immediate effect, it will have to affect the functioning of World Health Organization, because the World Health Organization will have to cut down some of their activities because the budget will no longer be there. They will now be operating within a tight budget. In that context, they will not have to, carry out their full activities. It will affect them because America being, besides the normal budget, there are still some missions that America used to sponsor as a country. Now, America will no longer participate. So, in one way or the other, it will affect the functionality of this institution, Vanessa.
All right, but Cynthia, you are telling us that it has no effect on that.
Well, they say America is the world superpower, like they are the center of everything in the world. But when it comes to this particular instance, I think the American country or America withdrawing from the World Health Organization doesn't mean the end or less functioning of the World Health Organization. Well, it is true that America is the number one fundraiser of the World Health Organization. And recently they said they even used to contribute over 20% of the funds. But now that it has drawn out of the organization, does it mean that the organization is weakened and will stop functioning? Just like Mange Venasio said earlier, they would have to cut down their expenditure and they'll be working within a tight framework. But I'm going to say that even if America contributed 80% of the funding, or even if they doubled what they used to give, they would still have limitations. So that's to say America was not the solution or was not the answer to all the problems the WHO could have. And with or without America, the World Health Organization is still functioning and will still continue to function. Maybe not as before, but what is sure is that it still continues to run and it's not going to die because America withdrew from there.
All right. Thank you very much, Cynthia, for your viewpoint.
That's my
I'm
viewpoint.
smiling because Mange Venasio is nodding his head. Mange Venasio, it has been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Probably we'll see you again tomorrow.
Who will be there? Will be there.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you also for watching Viewpoint on DBS Television. Take a rendezvous for tomorrow. And of course, God willing, we will be there. Bye-bye.